Just a few weeks ago, I gave a small talk on this hadith by the Prophet that says people could pray and their prayer would only get them farther from God, right? Because if you don't realize that prayer is a technology, sajda is a technology, it has to create a change inside you. So if you just do it, the Prophet says sometimes that's even worse, because what happens is that you get this idea that, well, I even tried prayer. I didn't really change myself that much. And usually the parent generation may be even guilty to say that, but their children see that. You have no idea how many messages I'm getting from parents saying my children are telling me, why should I pray? It's not changing you. It's boring, right? And they may force them, but I'm sure 10 years, 20 years after, they'll realize. Right? So this is the problem when you don't realize that these technologies have to be open. You don't get change, and the Prophet says this is worse because you're passing this information on to your children that, yeah, prayer, we tried it, not much change there. Whereas if they were with parents who hadn't prayed, maybe the possibility that prayer could be a beautiful thing would have been in their mind. Okay? And so this is, I think, the main problem we have. Right? We are transferring hadiths, which, of course, it's a beautiful thing. Bless the generations who passed it on to us because we needed them to be able to open them up. But now it's the time, it's a serious, urgent priority for us now to keep opening them. Right? We need to keep opening them. Otherwise, let me tell you this. I believe the impact of religion, Islam we're talking about right now, on our mental health, on our well-being in this world, on our spirituality is very minimal. Very minimal. You remember I gave the example of we have a Ferrari we're going 5 miles per hour with in the previous podcast? This is it, and this breaks my heart, right? And we think this is Islam. What we're doing right now is not Islam. Not even by any stretch of imagination. Okay? So we need to start taking this seriously, making it into a priority. And yes, you're right. A person who's not a scholar, who hasn't studied it, may not have the knowledge to do that, but they can have the expectation, right? They can have the expectation. When you see something's not changing you, why do you go and ask for more? Why do you then even force that on your children, right? It's very interesting. One of the spiritual teachers was mentioning this thing. He said, a lot of parents come to me and say, why don't my child follow the way, we did all of the things, religion, why isn't my child not following me? And he said, look at yourself. Where are you right now? Do you want your child to be like you? You're miserable, you're stressed, you don't have any presence of God in your life. Why do you want your child to be like you? So, yes, I'm a layperson. I don't have the Islamic understanding. Can I have at least the expectation, the understanding that this is not going well? And then not forcing my child when he or she comes up with a good question? See, when your child comes to you and say, this prayer is not working for me, that's a great opportunity for you to understand probably wasn't working for you either. Because if it was, you had an answer to give them. And then you go to the sheikh. You're like, Sheikhna, or to the mufti, or whoever's giving the lecture. We want more. Make it more elaborate. If this one not, then another one, right? People have to know that this is not working, One of my teachers was giving this example that if you go to a doctor and he gives you a prescription, so you've got terrible headache, get these 2 pills, it's going to go away in 2 hours. You go home, you take the pills, it doesn't work, right? Your headache is getting worse. What would you do? Probably you would either go to the doctor and say, didn't work, terrible pills, or you would go to another doctor. But when it comes to religion, they say, pray, your anxiety will go away. It doesn't work. I'm like, oh, maybe I don't have anxiety.
You know what I think that is actually? I think a lot of that is kind of keeping up with the Joneses. So you're told, do X and Y will happen. And everybody else on the surface seems to have had that impact, have had that reaction. So you think, oh, well, clearly the problem is not with the prescription, the problem is with me. Like, I'm not working, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't work in a medical sense, but it's like, oh, there's something wrong with me. Yeah. That's why. So I just need to do this harder. I need to pray harder. I need to fast harder. And it will eventually work. But I think it's bold, I guess, for you to present the perspective that actually we should push back and demand more and demand alternatives.
Exactly.
But I at the same time, I feel like and again, this is probably a different tangent that we can take, maybe even another time. But I don't feel like a lot of our, because you're right, when it comes to mental health, I think it's a huge area that needs to be discussed and explored, and something that we've tried to do on the Muslim Vibe quite a lot. But when you correlate that with lectures and seminars and workshops that are given in our Islamic centers and establishments, obviously pre-COVID, a lot of the content is a lot more fiqh and akhlaq based, for example. Don't necessarily look at mental health. Now you'll see like titles like Islam and mental health as like a topic.
It's become just marketing.
Very surface level. You know, that kind of thing. But I don't know if our institutions are fully ready and set up to provide this faculty for us.
I get you. Okay. Great point. Let me say one thing as well, that not all the fault is on the scholars as well.
It's all with them.